All right. Hey, everybody. This is the second episode of Brat Chat. Well, first episode after the pilot. Today we are here with Doug Espinosa, and like I said, I'm Jesse. Been in the dependent system in Department of Defense dependent schools, and moved around the world with my dad and his job working with the Defense Logistics Agency. Amber, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll let Doug have at it.
So my name is Amber Bittner, formerly Amber Hiles, but I have also been in the same boat. DoD to civilian stationed overseas in Wiesbaden, Germany. Went to Wiesbaden American Middle School, went to General H.H. Arnold High School with Jesse and both Doug. So we all knew each other in high school. But I also then married an active duty service member. So I've been kind of around the active duty military community my entire life. So I I've seen some things. But we'll let Doug introduce himself, just so we can all get started here.
Hey everybody, I'm Doug Espinosa. Just like both of them, I've been in the military dependent system my entire life as a kid, all the way through becoming an adult. Then I joined the Army myself. Then I became an Army civilian after the military. Then after that, I switched agencies a few times to make it ahead, moved around quite a bit after that, and now I'm here. All right, Jesse, we
Nope,
can't hear you.
we can't hear you. Something happened to your sound, but that's okay.
This thing is touch sensitive, and you can't see it, but I had a cat going behind my monitors, and his tail must have clipped it. I don't know. It
My my
like if you
dog ate my homework.
No, hold
Mine
on.
just might.
I know. My basset
Okay.
hound would. She tried to eat the wall. It was bad.
Well, um, so Doug, what does it all mean to you? Where does your first memory start for it all? And just what do you want to talk about in regards to growing up? Any memories you have about either me or Amber or anybody else?
Or anything in general you want to
Yeah.
share. Just like I said, and to warn everybody ahead of time. So we know that sometimes us in the military community, our language is not always for the faint of heart. So I'm just pulling that disclaimer out there now. If we are politically incorrect in any way, shape, and or form, we're honestly just shooting the breeze here. So Doug, like I said, have at it. What do you want to talk about today?
That's right. You pack 15 F words in a 12-word sentence.
There you go.
So, no, Jesse, you had asked earliest memory. I don't know. I mean, I was born in at the Wiesbaden Air Force Hospital when it still existed, which is now the German police headquarters for Wiesbaden.
Oh wow, I didn't
It's
know anything at the police headquarters.
yeah, it's right by the Amelia Earhart, right by the KFC. I think the KFC is still there. Lindsay Air
Right where
Station
the
is across.
the old Corps building used to be there, the Army Corps of
Yeah,
Engineers building. Yeah.
yeah. Then my dad was stationed at Camp Perry at that time in Schierstein. Uh, and mid 80s or so, we moved away from Wiesbaden and we ended up at the American Embassy in Bonn, Germany, when it was still in Bonn before, way before they moved to Berlin.
Yeah.
So that's really the first big impact in my life. Growing up during the Cold War in at the U.S. Embassy area before the wall even came down in East Berlin. So, I mean, my dad always told us, beware, don't advertise that you're an American. This is an embassy city, international. There's spies all over the place, just like in Berlin. You got to watch what you say, who you hang out with.
Oh yeah.
And then there were plenty of instances where we had to stay at home and because we lived on the economy, we had to close the shutters. Nobody was allowed outside the house. And
Oh yeah.
yeah,
What I've always found weird is how some of that stuff sticks with you for, your entire life, because that's one of the things that I was thinking about, the other day. One of the first things that, we ever experienced where people hated us because we were Americans. It was actually in Verdun And I remember, a bunch of French citizens at the time, because this is when the Kurdish protest rallies were really, really bad overseas. And I think we were like between like DEFCON yellow, DEFCON red, 90 around there. And they all sat on our car, so we couldn't actually get in our car. Now, we had just eaten at a restaurant, that's all that we had done. And after that, I remember my dad checking under the car, and I asked my dad, I said, well, why are you checking under the car? Because to get away from that, my dad, he's just said, keep your head down, keep moving, we're not even going to walk towards the car. He said, we're just going to keep going. And we walked around, probably for about 2.5 hours. Finally, when we got back to our car, nothing was there. Luckily, nobody had slashed our tires or anything like that, because this was France. Um, but with that being said, I remember him checking underneath the car, and I'm like, well, why are you checking underneath the car? And he told me he was checking for, explosive devices and things like that, because that's what we were told going over there was, keep our head down, don't make any sudden movements to make known that you're an American. Don't lean on anything. Never travel the same direction twice, And so even now, still to this day, I don't travel the same direction twice. And sometimes, I'm not going to lie, if I come out of Walmart, I will still look underneath my car. There's no reason I need to be looking underneath my car at Walmart, but you just kind of get that spidey sense, and it's just kind of like, I need to do this anyway, you know. So some of it sticks with you for life, absolutely.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
You're mute again.
Oh.
I think it probably wasn't a cat then. I don't know what's going on. Okay, let me know.
Jesse,
Oh,
you have a ghost. It's
okay,
Halloween season. You have a ghost. It's okay.
that's what it is. This is the haunted episode. But yeah,
It's
other
the ghost
kids
of IT screw-ups.
other
Yeah.
kids had like the don't climb trees near power lines and whatnot. On at AFN we were watching about force protection and OPSEC and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, uh,
Only you can prevent forest fires, and we're watch Russia and your neighbor. Like, that's what we were doing. When Smokey the Bear was watching for forest fires.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the Amelia Earhart. I actually my first real job was the summer work program through the school, working for the Amelia Earhart Playhouse, and they did a production of Music Man with all the kids in the summer program, and I got to help herd the cats there and keep all the kids from. I mean, because we had them building the set and everything else, and I mean, like you give like kids age 8 to 12 a whole bunch of tools and stuff, and it's just Susan Sarandon said, when you're dealing with kids, you see death everywhere, and if you don't, you're heartless. You know, like
Yeah.
um, and I ran sound for that, and it was one of the things that actually got me into audio production stuff. So
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, heck, I remember as a kid, I always thought the coolest thing ever was back then. My dad would bring home the up armored Mercedes from the embassy. Oh yeah, let's go for a ride in the up armored car, and all the neighbors are like, "What is going on here?"
Seeing your dad, like knowing who your dad was later in life, because I told you, me and your dad, he was a good friend of mine when I had gone back to Grafenwehr, but your dad, just thinking about him in that car just makes me smile. I don't know why. It's just the picture of him in that car. I can picture it in my head. So that's amazing, Doug.
It's just him.
Yeah, it's just him.
And that was also the very first time, because he was still on active duty while we were at the embassy.
Yeah.
But since you were not allowed to show military presence, he was not allowed. He was told you need to buy a suit and tie.
Yeah.
And he went to the Turkish bazaar and had to buy a suit and tie, and he looked so weird in his first suit and tie, and he hated every second of it at first.
I never saw him not come into the bank in a suit and tie. He was always wearing a tie and a jacket whenever he came into the bank. Always.
Yeah. And then after we left there, we went back to Wiesbaden, and he was still on active duty, so it was kind of a change, seeing him going from a camo uniform to a suit and tie for all those years, back to camo uniform, and then he retired from active duty, and then he went to work for the U.S. Army as a civilian over there in Wiesbaden at first. His first office was at the American Arms Hotel,
No.
and that was, I mean, when I was in high school and he worked at the American Arms, it was kind of strange at first because I fell in with kind of a crowd that was a little bit rowdy after school. We'd go downtown and do things that we weren't exactly supposed to do. And you know how
we all did that.
come on, think about it. They sold beer, liquor to us downtown at 16 and at the PX at 18.
Yeah.
And then we throw parties at the American Arms, rent rooms and throw parties. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, his office is on the first floor. I got to get as far up as possible so he can't see me right away and sneak past that side or go out the back side so he don't find me right away. But then I was like, wait a minute, but I got to circle around and exit out through the front parking spot, through the front gate, and run across the street to that little bowling alley. Or run straight
remember
forward,
that
got
little bowling alley.
and run downtown.
Man,
Yep.
that bowling alley was the first place I ate at when I got to Germany. Literally. Like,
No, I remember the American Arms Hotel. Now, the one thing about the American Arms Hotel, and we had to like stay there while we were trying to find a house. We stayed there for a couple of months. It was longer than usual. It wasn't a couple of weeks. You know, we were there over 30 days. And the thing about it, I remember because everybody at that point knew us by name, and like after school and stuff, like I would go and I would wander around like the conference rooms and stuff. Because you see, in Germany, I used to play trombone. Well, they had quiet hours, so we would have to shove like socks in my trombone so I could practice during German quiet hours at the American Arms Hotel. And just wandering around that hotel, you could tell the difference between they had an officer and an enlisted side. And I don't know if a lot of people know that, but you had one side that was like all carpet, but then you go into like the office side that was like marble and like these really nice like piers and stuff like that. But they had some of the best brunch and some of the best food on Sundays. I think one time they even brought in like a whole entire like smoked pig and Belgian waffles that were at least 2 inches thick. I mean, just amazing, amazing food.
I think my dad's office was one of the only ones that was not on the regular office side where all the marble was. Because you know when you
Yeah.
first walked into the front door and there was that front desk lobby,
Mhm.
that right to the left where they had that little tiny shopette store.
Yeah.
In that hallway, my dad's office was in that hallway. Why do you think it was so hard to escape out of that hotel all the time?
my
It was
dad.
just because it was your dad, okay?
I know, right? I think he did it strategically. He said, "I'm gonna catch my son screwing up."
Seeing your dad, I could see him doing something like that. Like I'm going to see.
No, that entire office, his organization, they were all right there because they were different. Because you know there was all international relations, so they kind of kept them separate from
Yeah.
everything else. But yeah, I remember American Arms very well. And then, I mean, everybody stumbling out of there or leaving there and then stumbling up to the high school early in the mornings. And we all try to hide it from the teachers. And you know damn well all the teachers knew that what we were doing because they'd see us downtown and we'd catch them too.
Oh yeah.
And then before I knew it, high school was over with. And heck, I worked at Popeyes for the longest time.
I remember you working at Popeyes. I do remember you working at
Mr.
Popeyes.
Black.
Yeah, because I think you worked at Popeyes around the same time John was working at Burger King.
Yes, we did.
If you remember Mr. Willie.
Yeah, I remember Mr. Willie.
I
And
remember Mr.
Fred
Willie.
and all
Yep.
that. And
Yep.
yeah, and then it was one of my days where I was off work when 9/11 happened. I was already out of high school at that time. I know you had mentioned that you were stuck on that bus.
We got stuck on the bus for about 6
I-
hours.
Yeah, I sat on the Taco Bell side, and I saw it right there on that big screen TV.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, you know, they moved all the Bradleys in front of Heineberg and had all the roving guards running around, and we got told you got to be on or off post by 7 p.m. Otherwise, you're sleeping on a park bench.
Yeah.
And I made it off just in time.
No, see, we were on the school buses right in front of the middle school, getting
Yeah.
ready to go home. And so we got stuck on that bus for about 6 hours. Finally, when we got home, because we lived, well, I lived in Heidenford, which that was like right outside of Heidesheim, Ingelheim, right across the river from Eltville. Um, so maybe about 45 minutes to an hour away from Wiesbaden. Um, I don't know where Jesse was living at the time. You were living in another town that was
Oh,
nearby.
yeah. We
Um,
were almost an hour away from Wiesbaden and Nockenheim, and
yeah.
I got home, and the house is dark, and there's nobody there, and I'm like, this can't, I'm freaking out, like
Yeah.
I had no
Because I
idea,
mean,
and
at that point, it was like 7, 8 o'clock at night. So by the time we got home, everything had already happened. So everything everybody had seen on the big screen, then we get hit with it after our base is shutting down. Like, what is going on? Like, worried the entire time,
yeah,
So yeah, it was definitely different for different people depending on where you were at on that base. Because my mom was still working at AFES at the time, and I think John was at Burger King. Dad was at the Corps, so we were all in different places.
Yeah, I mean, I got off and I stayed with friends at the Arms that night.
Yeah,
And I had called my parents and say, hey, look, this is where I'm at. I know normally I don't really check in very often because even at that time I was barely ever at my parents' house. I'd always stay with everybody else, and we'd all have our own little clique going.
yeah.
And then, before I knew it, I moved back to the States. Started off in Leeds, Alabama, then went down to Mobile, and then I joined the Army. And then before I knew it, I graduated. And next thing I was looking at my first set of orders. I'm like, okay, oh, Germany. I just left Germany, and I was supposed to go to Baumholder originally.
Oh wow, yeah, but they shut Baumholder down.
No, it still exists. It's still there. It's
Really,
one of the bigger ones. Smith Barracks is still there.
really.
It's one of the bigger posts. Uh, then,
I thought that was one of the ones they shut down. I might be thinking of a different one.
yeah,
They shut a lot of them down.
yeah. But when I got my orders, I mean, I called my dad, right? I said, hey, pops, I said, I got orders to go to Baumholder, and he said, okay. I get, I land at Rhine Mine. I land at the replacement detachment. I get, I go over there, turn my orders in, and they said, no, you're getting diverted. I said, what do you mean?
Hooray, Army!
No, hooray, Dad.
There
He
you
called
go.
some people, and I ended up in Mainz at McCully Barracks in Wackernheim.
yeah.
So that
Mine
was
was.
That's
Oops.
awesome,
right in
though,
England.
Doug.
Yeah,
That
it
is
was.
awesome.
At first I was like, I wanted to be in Baumholder away from my dad, make my own mark, and then he had to put his hand in it. But at the very end, it was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me because I was able to go visit my parents. And when I arrived, everybody said, well, okay, well, let's give you a tour through Wiesbaden, Mainz, this, and I said, oh, no, I'll be your tour guide. I'll show you all the places you don't know about. And they were always wondering at first, for the first few months, how does he know all this stuff? And then all of a sudden, the first time they heard me speak German, and then they had a real shock. They said, oh my God, what is really going on? Before I knew it, I had to translate for all the guys in my unit so they could talk to the German girls. And I told them, so you better be careful what you wish for, because I might say something that you might not like.
Yeah, but in all honesty, Doug, I mean, in that respect, you spent enough time in Germany to where, in all honesty, it's. I mean, your mother is half. I mean, you're half German.
Mm-hmm.
As far as citizenship and things of that nature, and when you think about German mentality, I've been known, even sometimes in my jokes, I will tell somebody to say the worst possible thing to somebody. I told a waitress one time to go up to a table of like gentlemen who were like all like drinking beer, and I'm just like, yeah, just tell them Schluck de Luden.
Yeah. No, as far as citizenship, I've never had German citizenship. I was always 100% American citizen.
Yeah.
So,
But
but yeah, I was stationed there for a while. Then Then we went for Iraq for the invasion with First
Yeah.
Armored Division, and we did our time over there. And then when we finally came back and landed back in Rhine Mine, we hopped on the bus at Rhine Mine to get back to Mainz to McCully, and the bus driver got us lost all the way from Rhine Mine to McCully. I think we were circling around Wiesbaden and Mainz for like an hour before he figured out the right exit.
That reminds me, one time we were late getting to school. We had a stand-in bus driver because our regular was sick, and I can't remember if we were riding the same bus at the time, Amber, but we were heading towards not towards the school at Wiesbaden, but towards I think it's the Air Force base that was nearby. Um,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Why are we doing this?" And the driver, the guy turns around and he says, "This driver only knows how to get there from the base, so he's got to go to the base first, so he knows how to get to the school."
Yeah. So funny thing. I don't know if you guys remember Mr. Frederick, the band director. Do you guys
Yes.
remember Mr. Frederick's? Okay.
Absolutely.
So it was during Fasching, and it was Fasching. It was still what the cold months in Germany, okay? And so it was really, really hard on my trombone. My trombone actually broke in half in the middle of us marching in that parade. Well, they put me up on the Fasching float, okay, with the organization that we had, like, peace relations, whatever. Like, this was something we were strategically partnering with as a school, for German organizations and things like that. So we were trying to, like, be good little members of the community. Anyway, so we're marching in the Fasching parade and everything else. I'm on this float, and so they just start giving me stuff, and they instruct me. They're like, "Yeah, just hand the stuff off the float," and a lot of it is like full-blown wine bottles, because that's how they rolled in Germany. They would just hand out the full-blown wine bottles off the float. So I'm throwing the popcorn balls, I'm handing out the beads, just like Mardi Gras. And the thing about it is, I will never ever forget it because they're giving me Glühwein at this time. Now I'm 14, and they're giving me Glühwein. So I'm drinking all this Glühwein to stay warm. I'm throwing the stuff off the float. Well, right at the end of the parade, the band goes one direction towards the bus. The float goes to the local pub. The band director, Mr. Frederick, he forgot that I was on the float. Okay. So he didn't do a head count or anything, completely left me in like Mainz. We're doing this and like, we had to go back to the school in Wiesbaden. And so finally I knew just enough German. I found some German lady who was going to Wiesbaden. Luckily I was able to kind of hitchhike with her. She takes me back to the school. She tells me she's a little bit tipsy from the parade when she's driving on the Autobahn. So that scares me to begin with because she's German. And for a German to say, "I've had a little," it's like, ooh, how much is a little? you know? And so we get back to the school. I get up to AFES and I tell my mom. My mom punches out. Now it's like 5 p.m. at this point. She marches me up the hill. Okay. So up the hills for the commissary, all the way from the PX, all the way back to like General H.H. Arnold School. She busts into that band room where Mr. Frederick's still there because he's packing up to go home for the day. And she's just like, "Frederick." I thought she was going to rip his soul from his face. But he did. He completely left me in Mainz. Like, didn't account for me or anything. I was just out there.
He was probably just 1, 2, 3, good enough.
Yeah, I mean, we got two examples here you said we had access to alcohol at a pretty young age. Like
Yeah, we did.
I actually went to see Leonard Skinner at Ramstein, and
Okay.
they were serving beer. Okay, and I was a smoker back then too, and I got a beer, and I'm sitting there with my beer and my cigarette waiting for the show to start, and I was like 17, and I hear, "Oh, hey, Jesse," and I turn around, and it's my French teacher and the ASACS counselor, and I'm sitting there with a beer and a cigarette, underage, and they were like, "Hey, what song are you hoping to hear?" And I'm like, working for MCA, you know.
Yeah, but that was a cool thing over there too. You could actually get into some like really, really cheap concerts. Cause I think I went to the Schlefthaus, if y'all remember where the Schlefthaus was.
The Schlachthaus.
Yeah, the Schlachthaus. And I saw Green Day for like $5. It was like a $5 cover that night, and that was like when Nimrod was coming out, like that whole entire album. And so you could see some really cool bands over there. I think Tool came over there too. Like, yeah.
I used to love going to the Irish pub in Mainz by the South train station where you walk down the stairs because
Yeah.
they had live music every single night there.
Well, they had
And I
some of the best shepherd's pie too, but I'm a
oh
shepherd's
yeah,
pie fan.
their sandwiches were amazing too.
Yeah,
Yeah. I used to
so
go there.
good.
I started going there in high school, then kept going there afterwards, and then before I knew it, I was back in the army, and I came back, and it was the same bartenders, and they said, "What are you doing back here?" And then I came back on leave in 2009 to go visit there when I was out from Iraq in '07 on mid-tour leave, and in '09 when I was with the 82nd at Fort Bragg, and the same bartenders were still there, and they looked at me and said, "You just can't leave us alone. You won't leave, will you?" And then I came after my father passed. My brother still lives in Hochheim around from Mainz, around the corner. And Christmas Eve that year, we spent Christmas there. And that Eve, with coronavirus still going on, I walked around a little bit just to walk around, and I walked downstairs. But of course, they were closed. Otherwise, I probably would have given him a heart attack if he would have seen me again. I said, "Man, this guy I don't know what it is with him."
No, it's actually funny because I ran into, I don't know if you remember Pete Dupre.
Mhm.
But Pete, he was actually selling his books and things at the Grafenwehr PX. He was doing the vendors in front of, the vendors there. And I was always so used to seeing him in Wiesbaden growing up, and I hadn't seen him since I was like, 10 or 11 years old. Like I was little the last time I think I saw Pete, and Pete was really good friends with my brother. And so I introduced myself and I shook his hand, and he remembered my brother. He remembered me. He asked me how I was doing, how my dad was doing. Now, I didn't know that my brother had been writing him letters, but we all know that my brother has a way of, communicating with people sometimes.
Yeah.
But he, yeah, it was absolutely amazing to see.
You
It's
know,
amazing the people who'll recognize you when you go over there.
when I was stationed in McCully, I used to hate going to Grafenwehr and Hohenfels.
I don't blame you.
I think everybody did, but
It's not any better. I will vouch for that.
you know, every time it was like, "You're going to Grafenwehr." I'm like, "Oh, fuck." So we go to Grafenwehr, and of course, we'd go to Camp Aachen,
Yeah.
and our unit still had us set up the big tents, the GP medium, GP larges out there, and we were in the middle of setting up tents and everything, and we had a major out there and lieutenant colonel trying to point fingers in directions, and all of a sudden my dad pulls up on the side of the shoulder where the grass is, where we're setting up the tents, with his Mercedes, and steps out in a suit and tie and has bags of Burger King, walking across the grass with Burger King, handing all of us E1 through E5 Burger King, and say, "Here you go, here you go." And I'm going back to the Mercedes with him, talking to him, and I come back, and he gave me potato salad too that my mom made. And I came back, and he said, "Who the hell were you talking to? He's going to have to talk to me." I said, "Wrong. You're going to have to go talk to him. That's my dad." I said, "He runs this place."
Oh yeah, no, our dads are superheroes. They really are. But the coolest thing about Grafenwehr, and what I will say about Grafenwehr outside of Gate 3, it might have been Gate 3, it might have been Gate 1, but there was a little pizza place. It was the Kontiki Bistro. Do you remember that little pizza place?
Yes.
They just sold pizza and sandwiches and beer. And they had some of the best, like they had a Priezel beer and pizza that was amazing. And then I love their sandwiches. It was just some amazing food. And it was cheap, but it was always good. And like, for €5 you could get like pizza and a sandwich. And it's like, this is amazing.
Yeah,
But
trust
it's
me. Yeah,
still there.
we ran away from Camp Aachen a few times and went out Gate 1. And I don't know how we found our way back to the camp, but we did. And then next day, we miraculously would have to shoot the 50 cals and the Mark 19, and half of us were sitting there like trying to aim. And but I've realized that even with Grafenwehr, it was visiting there outside of going to the field was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, over the years, the main post had built up. The city was great. I loved Vidon, where my parents lived,
Yeah.
and
Biden was neat.
I came back there more and more and more and more. And actually, I took my wife over there in 2014 for Christmas, and I proposed to my wife at my parents' house at Christmas Eve. And
Invite?
now in Vidon at their house.
Nice. I didn't
Yeah,
know that was in Biden, but nice.
yeah, they live in Vidon.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
and after my father passed away, my mom moved back. She lives in Rüsselsheim now.
Okay.
My brother Joe still lives in Hochheim. My other brother stayed in Bonn after we left the embassy.
Yeah.
So my sister Sandy lives in Alabama. We're the only ones in New Mexico.
Well, that's because you left Mobile. We tried to keep you for a while, but we couldn't.
And look, I couldn't get promoted at the Corps.
I understand. No, completely. No, trust me.
No, I had interviewed for a position to where I could get a promotion, but my boss ended up hiring his nephew for that
Yeah.
position. So I
That's not.
accepted the position with Fish and Wildlife, and they
Yeah.
PCSed me out here. And
Yeah.
then I couldn't get promoted there. I took a job with my current agency, and now I'm blessed enough to work from home every single day. And
Yeah.
I got a good promotion ladder.
There you go.
And on top of that, the VA here is amazing. They take great care
Good.
of us.
That's awesome.
Not
Not
like the
not
one in
all
Mobile.
not all states VAs are created equal. Some states are better than others. So that's really important. That's super, super amazing.
Yeah,
But
they take amazing care of me.
good deal. So you ever want to start a small business? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
I don't know. I probably piss off the lenders and everybody else involved with it in the process.
Yeah, but you see, that's why you would hire me, because I would help you not do those things, right?
Well, see, I don't know. Maybe I just need to join somebody else's business and be their muscle.
There you go.
Because I know how to cuss people out really well. As a professional NCO, I'm really good at that.
Now, speaking about the business, Amber put me to work, because I've been on Facebook talking about, I'm living in Canada right now, which by the way, one thing I took for granted was how easy it was for my family to move around thanks to the US government and the military and everything. Like we'd
Yeah.
ship out to where like we went to Japan. And the only thing my dad really had to take care of was make sure all of our paperwork and passports were good and like he had cost of living allowance and all of that. I am currently in Canada with my partner and him and I are having a heck of a time because my lawyer said if you can get remote work, I'm like, oh yeah, I worked for Blizzard Entertainment for a few years. Like I'm well acquainted with call center customer service, and I ended up getting certified in HTML and CSS, and um, like nobody's wanting to hire me, and I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, oh yeah, one person was like, oh, your IP said you were from Canada, so our automated system just deleted your resume, but I pulled it out of the recycle bin and looked at it, and would you like to interview? And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like I'm a U.S. citizen. Like I have all of my ID with me. Like and anyway, even then, it's hard getting remote work. And Amber was like, I need this website built, and I'm like, I'm gonna do this, and
Great.
But then I told him I can't pay you yet, Jesse. So we're getting there.
I just, we will get there, okay. And
Absolutely.
for right now, I've got the support I need to stay where I am, and I'm gonna continue working hard on it. And it's just one of those things. It's so hard in the digital age to everybody's like, oh, there's opportunity everywhere, and it's like, yeah, but you've got AI filtering out like 98% of all applicants, and most of the time it's completely erroneous data that's being
Yeah.
snagged and used to exclude people. And
See, that's what makes it hard to even get in on like the government level or things of that nature now. Because I've actually been applying for positions and things like this, and this is positions that I know that I can do. I sat as the chief financial officer, for a logistics company where we focused on government procurement. I'm an accredited small business consultant. I don't understand why I can't be a customer service representative to say, hi, how are you today? It's not like I'm trying to make you sign this loan origination document. that I was having to do over here, which required some type of security and licensure. So and it's like, well, we really appreciate your experience, but we've decided to go with, other candidates. And it's like, but I'm capable. Like I can't stock a can on a shelf, but
Well,
I can do this, but your automation's also not going to pick me up because I'm too experienced or overqualified. It's the hiring process in companies has gotten ridiculous.
well,
It
see,
really honestly has.
and that's the thing. It's like, the environment that we were in, it was always like, if you can't leverage what you have to get the opportunities that are out there, then you need to create your own opportunity. You know?
Exactly.
And I feel like that's like a strength that was kind of in some ways kind of beat into us over the course of growing up around all the military. I remember, I'm not going to use the exact words, okay, but when I was in Cub Scouts in Japan, one of the dads pulled up and he had this flatbed truck full of these sandbags, and he's like, "Okay, boys," and we're like 9, okay. He's like, "Stack all of these like this over here," and we spent like 4 hours. These things are like 50 plus pounds, and like some of us weighed less than that. And we stack all of these, we're tired as hell. We stacked all these sandbags, and he's like, "All right, boys, back in the truck." And I was like, "What are we learning from this?" And he's like, "You're learning not to be a little, I was like, "Oh my god."
Oh no, and I mean that was the one thing about, being a Corps kid too, is because we always tended to go wherever the disasters were, or whenever the army would blow something up, that's where we would end up. And so, even witnessing, and I had a weird memory the other day, and I can't even remember quite what it was from, but I believe, in all honesty, I went through Hurricane Hugo in Charleston, South Carolina in 1989. I also went through Hurricane Katrina in Mobile, Alabama when Hurricane Katrina hit. So going through both of those natural disasters, I still remember my dad, filling sandbags and me helping him. Now I'm like 4 years old, helping my dad fill these sandbags. And my job was to hold the red funnel. And he told me that holding the red funnel was a really important job. Like, this is what I remember about this. And even then, I'm still helping them fill sandbags to, protect us from the storm and to do stuff. And so, a lot of times we grow up around the military, but sometimes it's kind of like, we all act as a unit just together, because you have like a family unit. It's almost like a hive type situation, I guess, the military community.
Well, I mean, like we said in the last episode, we all kind of like commiserate over the fact
Yeah.
that we're detached from our actual extended family everywhere else. And,
Yeah.
I want to have my brother on here because, he graduated in '06, right? So that was when we were really starting to get into the thick of it in the Middle East, and, everybody's parents were over there. Everybody's worried, and the kids would get stressed out, and they would, if somebody would start singing "Lean on Me," all the kids would kind of gather around and, like, physical comfort, hug this person until they felt okay again, felt okay enough to get back to class or whatever it is they're trying to do, you know?
Yeah. See, in '06, I was working 2 full-time jobs and pulling 15 credit hours. I stopped paying attention to everything.
Man, in '06, I went to go see my brother graduate, and it was in the middle of the World Cup. And
No.
imagine, like, I mean, it's Europe already. You're like sandwiched between, or at least close by to, like, Asia, India, Africa, all of that, right? So it's already kind of a melting pot. And then you throw the World Cup in there, and you've got all of these people from all over the place. It was just shocking. I mean, and you'd think I'd be used to it because I've lived in Japan, I've lived in, in Europe. But I'm at the bar, and I'm there with a guy from Ghana, a guy from, Australia, and like we're all just watching soccer and having beers. But yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought there.
It's
Ryan calls it the brain squirrel, but
we all get brain fog here. It's great. It's a part of our condition.
no, I just like sitting around riffing. And, the one thing I realized with this whole conversation is that, I know a lot of these places, but I don't remember a lot of them, and I feel like I was that much of an introvert. Like, I kind of stuck to where, like Mainz, Castell, Wiesbaden, Heidelberg, Darmstadt. I spent a lot of time just trolling around Darmstadt. And that was actually the electronic music scene there is kind of molded my musical taste as a musician. And like there was a guy, Captain Jack. I don't know if you guys know Captain
Yes.
Jack.
I remember Captain Jack.
Yeah, he got his start in clubs in Darmstadt. Okay,
Okay.
and he's been in Dance Dance Revolution. He was all over the place in Dance Dance Revolution in the arcades. Oh, speaking of the arcades, man, and you worked there. They had the arcade right there near the Popeyes and everything. At one point, they moved it right by the entrance, and I used to play
Yep.
Tekken Tag Tournament for hours and hours and hours. I mean, if I had all the money back from Tekken Tag Tournament, I could probably afford to pay rent here for another 3 months.
You
I
know,
remember. I remember because
that's
they moved the hot potato spud place out of there to move the arcade in there, and I was cussing up a storm because I love those hot potato spuds.
Man,
yeah.
you
No,
know what?
they
Oh,
moved the entire PX because the last time I went up there, I think the Taunus Theater was surprisingly still open. But the PX and everything else, like you've got trees growing through buildings. Like it's not what it
Sad.
was at all. It's very, very sad.
Yeah, that.
Last time I went to Wiesbaden.
I remember they had the laundromat all the way at the end. I remember
Hmm.
because I slept on top of those washers a few nights.
Yeah.
But no, you had mentioned
We
'06. I had just left Mainz in '06 and went to Fort Bragg in '06, and then '07 I went to Iraq for the again for the presidential troop surge.
yeah.
And I found out in '06 that I was going in '07, but I it was over Christmas leave, and I found out through CNN that I was going, and we had a 3-day notice, and
See,
I was visiting Alex Bagwell
oh,
in,
I remember him.
in
We
South
need to get him
Carolina.
on the show too.
Yep. I was visiting him in South Carolina, and we were flipping through the TV, and there was CNN. There was a sea of maroon berets that said Second Brigade,
Yeah.
82nd Airborne Division going to Iraq, and he just looks at me and said, "Ain't you in Second Brigade?" I said, "Uh huh. Do you know anything about this?" "Uh uh." So I drove back to Fort Bragg, and I and I looked at my headquarters, getting ready to sign in. And out walks my buddy Sergeant Jerkins. He said, "Hey man, I see you over there. I'm on Advon. I see you there next week." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Pack your bags." The next thing you know, we were gone for 15 months again.
Oh, wow. No. Well, I mean, at least you found out in some way. Unfortunately, it was CNN, but I mean, it could have been worse. It could have been worse.
Oh yeah, it could
That's
have been. But at least in Germany, they gave me like a month's worth of notice before I went anywhere. There, they said, "Oh no,
oh yeah.
you're airborne. You're going in 3 days." And I called my mom in Germany. Said, "Hey, mom, you sitting down? I got to go somewhere. I can't tell you where I'm going though."
Oh wow. See, that was the one thing when we actually had to come from JBLM to Gordon or Eisenhower. Well, Gordon, they changed it back. But we had to go all the way there and they gave us a notice. It was the middle of COVID. And we had like 4 days to get all the way from Seattle to Gordon. And so we had to find a U-Haul and everything else because TSP wouldn't pack our things. So we had to do a full like, DIY move. And moving over there, just the drive alone, finding the house, buying the house sight unseen, getting over there, just getting to Georgia, it was a trip. But it was right in the middle of COVID, and around the bases they kept gouging, and that's the one bad thing. Like when you live around a base, is because when you have like natural disasters and things, you'll have like all of these small businesses that will start gouging their prices because to get a U-Haul during the time of COVID, like in the Tacoma area, they wanted to charge us $10,000 for like 4 days. And it's like, what is this noise? And so my ex ended up having to fly to like Spokane just so we could actually get the U-Haul, just so we could actually make the trek to come down here. And it was
Mm.
just it was a nightmare trip. But yeah, the Army's notorious for things like that. Hurry up and wait, and then yanking your chain.
Yeah, just like you learned, never buy a car at a used car lot at a military base.
There's
Exactly.
there's a reason they call it the lemon lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then rub some dirt in it and just drink some water. You're
Matter
okay.
of fact,
And
my
here's
first
two
car,
Motrin.
in Germany when I was stationed in Wackernheim, in Mainz, uh,
Yeah.
I got it from Steve Marshall's dad. I don't know if y'all remember that. He had that big maroon van.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my first car when I was in the barracks there, and I got it from off his dad for $1.
My dad, when we first got over there from that same lemon lot, we could tell you the exact like your make and model. But that car, the one thing I will say, like the AC, nothing in that car worked.
Oh,
It got because it just quit running. I don't quite know how he disposed of that car and if he did it in the proper way that you're supposed to in Germany or not. Or the heater, like, guys were gonna melt out of your face, like the heater would go in that car. It was a lemon lot too when we first went to Germany.
oh man.
Nope.
Yeah, I was
I'm
able to
enjoying
get,
the conversation.
Yeah,
I was
you
able to
know,
get rid of the van at the auto self maintenance self help maintenance shop at McCully.
Yeah.
It was older short Italian guy that worked there, and he gave me $10 for it, and I said, "Here you go, sell it to another soldier. I ain't got time."
There you go.
you know,
Sometimes that's what you have to do.
you talk about vehicles in Germany. I remember going to Berlin with my dad, and I saw this weird looking car, and I'm like, I have never. I mean, what is that? And he's like, oh,
Trabi,
huh?
Trabi, Trabant.
I don't know. I can't remember what it was exactly, but he's like, yeah, that's a Soviet-made vehicle. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, you sit in that thing and you fart too much in that vehicle, the doors fall off. Yeah,
I remember, and you see, and kids today don't get this, but you know, growing up overseas, we grew up with a lot of British TV because that's what we had, you know, on the German stations if we lived on the economy, and so we watched a lot of like Mr. Bean and things. And I don't know if you remember the blue car with three wheels that he always wanted to push over, like you know, and stuff like that still makes me laugh. Like the car with three wheels, it's like it must go away. Um, but yeah, you know, stuff like that makes me laugh. So
yeah.
I meant, you
it's
know,
dry humor. I think we have a different sense of humor. I really do.
man, you mentioned COVID. I don't know if you've seen me. I'm actually recovering from COVID right now. I was sick for a week. I had fever off and on for several days. Oh,
And he still managed to get a website up, so I am still very, very
I,
proud, very
I
happy.
did a whole website, like 30 plus different files just for the pages themselves, plus artwork that I composited from stuff that I generated with AI, and I am not ashamed of that because I did not have 40 plus hours to do all of that. But yeah, I learned a lot of JavaScript as well. I'm more of a design guy, like user interface, user design guy. So it's one of those things like you learn as you go. And yeah, I'm really glad that I got to work on something because it's been just like portfolio projects. Like I made like a guide for Final Fantasy 14 where like you click on the job class icons and it gives you a description with some artwork. And uh, but this is the first time I've actually ever built like a full enterprise like business website. And it's still got a long way to go, but I mean the basic proof of concept is done. I'm one of those people that's like I've got to have everything in place, and then I can kind of like figure out the intricate inner workings of it all. And anyway, and
Jesse, you're nerding out again.
I know I am.
It's okay.
I was gonna bring it back around on topic. I was just gonna say thank you, Mr. Seltzer, for all the tech classes with you know learning all the programming and HTML. So it's actually
Exactly.
it's less hard for me to pick up programming languages because I already know kind of how they work. I just need to know what I've got to actually type in specifically to create functions and stuff.
Mr. Seltzer and my dad are the reason why I know DOS. But it's actually funny because during COVID, I sat on the PPP and EIDL disaster response team for Washington State. And in processing those things and in doing those things, I will never ever forget when the virus first came out, the SBA, they put out a solicitation looking for people who spoke COBOL because the first day that they put the loan system out, it crashed because it was running off of COBOL. And I remember asking my dad, because my dad was the computer specialist, like that was what he did, was like all the programming and everything else. I'm like, Dad, I said, you could answer this solicitation from the SBA. I said, you speak COBOL. I said, this could be a perfect, way for you to possibly consult in your retirement or, do X, Y, and Z. And my dad just looked at me. He's like, don't you know everybody who speaks COBOL is dead? He's like, this is the reason why we have space junk, like in outer space, is because people can't speak the language to bring it back down. He's like, nobody speaks COBOL anymore. And the little bit of COBOL I know, I'm taking to the grave with me. I just looked at him like, Dad, like, what is this?
Man, I
I
remember
love my dad. Oh, he was amazing.
I remember Seltzer was going through the storage closet and he found a whole bunch of these optical discs, and it looked like the stuff from Metal Gear Solid. And I was like, oh, I want it, I want it, I want it. He's like, do you have the hardware to utilize it? And I'm like, yeah, you know. So I had this optical disc, and I'm like nerding out over Metal Gear Solid. I'm like, I have an optical disc just like Solid Snake. I was such a dweeb, man.
I had a Commodore 64 I was building from the ground up, so don't feel bad. Okay, that's what I was doing in my garage in college.
And now that I'm in my 40s, like I needed to build a new computer because my old one was just the motherboard was shot, the processor, nothing I did would keep it from getting so hot that it was thermal throttling, and I was like, man, I need to build a new one. Then I'm like, or I could get this pre-built for $800 and then just throw a new graphics card in it later. So that's what I did,
Or two,
and I
but
mean, I know I will probably always know how to build a computer unless somehow they go nuclear and I need to be a nuclear physicist to handle the material or something. But
I strangely hear, and I'm just gonna play the devil's advocate here as I have a twinkle in my eye, but I strangely hear that China might be working on that.
well, I mean, China is actually they're
No,
they're
no, we're
they're
not gonna start talking about China.
I was just gonna say they're doing a lot of cool stuff with AI. Okay,
They really are. They really are.
and
Absolutely.
there anyway. Okay. I'm gonna shut my mouth because I was about to start talking geopolitics and like the
No.
microchip manufacturing and how China wants that. We're not going to go there. We're not going to go there.
No.
I'm not talking about any kind of countries or anything like that that can get me in trouble with my job.
No.
Exactly. I mean, you're just like on the internet.
That's
I mean,
exactly right.
on the internet, you're just inviting a shitstorm. Oh, sorry. You know what I'm saying? Like,
We already had the trigger warning about the language. It's okay.
yeah.
We can say shit.
Well, I mean, like, you know, I mean, until I started going to because I held off going to therapy for years and years, for decades. And since going to therapy, I've kind of been able to catch myself before I get on the, because I'm probably on the autism spectrum. I know you're all shocked to hear that. Okay.
We're strangely not surprised, but it's okay because we love you anyway, Jesse. We really
Well,
do.
well, like I would see people that they would like post something, and it would be like a quote with a parenthetical or something, and I'm like, you don't understand. It's a logical fallacy, and I'd have all the like dissertation typed up, and I'm like, and I used to just post it, and now it's like okay, I'm just gonna no, like
There's a song by Against Me that I need to send to you saying, stop, take some time to think. But I've had to learn how to do that too. And see, and that's the one thing people who have been around the military community, who have been through things like we have. And I was actually doing a study on it, but it was 62% of military spouses or active duty military spouses currently have post-traumatic stress disorder. And when you start looking at the children who have post-traumatic stress disorder and everything else that is involved, within the military, the one thing I think in our reactions, because I know I've been in therapy, I know Jesse's been in therapy. I can tell you about a handful of other people that we knew that are in therapy. There's no shame in it. But sometimes we have trouble processing things, and growing up, we have to teach ourselves, hey, we have to sometimes stop and take some time to think, because not everything is like rush, 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 rush. Because that's the one thing with the military, it's hurry up and wait. And if you're not there, 15 minutes early, you're late. And so we're raised like that, and so yeah, it definitely.
You got to be there the 15 minutes before the 15 minutes.
Exactly.
It's
And
even
then,
worse when you're on active duty.
and
First formation, if you were late, God forbid.
if you're lower enlisted, you have to be there 4 hours early for no apparent reason whatsoever.
And
So,
yeah, and people used to think I was so weird when I because I was the overnight shift lead at my most recent job for an entire supermarket, and our team was 4 people for a whole truck, a whole store all night long, and I would show up. My shift started at 9, and I was usually there by 7, and they're like, "What are you? Why are you here, Jesse?" And I'm like, "Well, I need to walk the floor. I need to see where the major outages are. I need to plan my night. I need to see if the truck is here, and if the truck isn't here, I need to call somebody to see when the truck is going to be. Because it's been ingrained in me, like if you're in a position of leadership, you get there and you have a plan ready for when your team gets there. Okay, like because you're not going to be able to be an effective leader if you show up when everybody else does and you kind of just try to react to everything on the fly. It just doesn't make sense, you know? And
yeah.
you couple that together with like our perspective of living in different countries with different systems of government and being able to travel freely between them all, and like you learn that there are a lot of different ways to do things, and just because you have a certain way of doing something, it's not always going to work, and that's why the different perspectives matter. But I don't know. I kind of have 2 thoughts in one there. I'm sorry, guys.
It's okay. Stop apologizing for yourself, Lord.
I had an employee. He was like, look, you're a nice boss, but every time you say I'm sorry, those two 20-year-olds over there think you're weak. And I'm like, well, I'm just trying to be nice. And he's like, think about it. Are they nice to you? And I'm like, it's like, I
Yes,
was I was
that,
I was raised in this rigid Christian, and like be polite, be considerate, blah blah blah. Like that's not really how the world works. And I wish I could adopt more. And that's the thing, is I did want to go into the military at one point, but I'm not going to get into the circumstances that prevented me. But I wish I had. I was gonna go for linguistics, and
that's okay, Jesse. We're still of age where we could join, because I think they recently raised the cutoff year. Is it 42 now, Doug?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can still join. We
Well,
still have 2 years to make that decision. Um,
you
if
do.
things get too financially bad, it might be a decision I eventually make. We shall see.
well,
But
I mean,
I haven't made it yet.
I told remember I mentioned my buddy Tom at work. I told him, I wish I could have served, and he said, well, you still can, and even if you can't, there are other ways you could serve. And the reason I bring that up is I was being kind of a creeper, Doug. Before the show, I kind of poked through your Facebook posts, and I noticed that every year you do the fundraiser on your birthday for Wounded Warrior Project.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
there are,
That's an
and
important
that's
one.
and I'll actually tie it back to my ranting about online political arguments. Somebody said, what's a solution you have for the political situation? And I was like, okay, simply screeching online about it doesn't do anything. There are a lot of charities out there that need help, that need your support, and that's a more concrete way of actually having a social impact. Um,
Well, it's actually out there getting and joining and doing something yourself too, because I mean that's the one thing. Even in high school, I mean, I was, food not bombs. That was me in a nutshell. And so, when it comes to that sense of community and that sense of activism, I think that's part of how we give back, is that we involve ourselves in these organizations like Habitat for Humanity, or we'll join the Peace Corps, or we'll join the Mission of Hope and things like that. Because I know that I worked for a long time just within the Mission of Hope, America's Thrift Stores. We worked with the Penelope House. We worked, breaking the chains of addiction, things like that. And so I think that community service has a lot to do with it too, if that makes sense.
yeah, when
Yeah, it's the mentality.
when I was finally able to go back to work, because I had people telling me, "Oh, you'll never be able to socialize again," and my dad was like, "That's BS. Just why don't you just try to find a job?" And I was like, "I guess I'll try the Goodwill because it's right down the street." And I started working there, and um, you have people show up like their relative has just died and they're dropping stuff off or whatever, and that's where I started, was the donation door, and eventually I became a cashier, which I was terrified of because I had to actually talk to people. But we had a charity every month that, if you round up, that's where the money was going, and I had like a 98% on getting people to round up. And my boss is like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, that paper you put in the break room that has all the details about the charity? I just memorized that." And when somebody asks, what's the roundup for, I could literally sit there and give them a verbal dissertation about what it is the money's going towards, you know? And
That was the one thing that always actually bothered me about Germany, because did anybody ask where the pennies were going? Because if you noticed, you couldn't ship the pennies overseas, like they didn't get shipments of the pennies, and then they would always round the pennies up to like the nearest 5 cents. So if it was 3 pennies, you would get a nickel back, but if it was 2 pennies, you wouldn't get any change back whatsoever. And so they were pocketing those like 2 to 3 pennies. So what happened to all of that change? Like, how is that accounted for? Like, what did that go towards? And that has bothered me since I was a little kid, and I don't know why.
I'm pretty sure you've seen them in circulation when you were still overseas.
I worked at the bank. I know I did.
No, early on at AFES, especially when we first started coming back from Iraq in '04,
Yeah.
from our first rotations, and they used to give us those little paper pogs. Those
I remember the paper pogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'd give them to the cashiers, even in Germany at the PX and all, and they looked at us and they hated us for it. It's like, well, what is this crap? I said, it says AFES on it. You have to take it.
Yeah.
And they didn't like us for it. Especially one of my buddies that he had like a whole Ziploc bag full of them, and he bought a whole bottle of Jack Daniels with that bag. Oh, they hated him.
And you asked where the money goes. There was actually, when I was in Japan, they had this whole on it was AFRTS back then, um, and they had the little commercial called the 5%. Okay, and but everybody wonders about the 5%, and it's like this little like jazzy kind of hip hop thing, and they're talking about, this is how we support and maintain our commissaries, and I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, I think I was like 7 or 8 at the time, so I didn't really understand the concept of taxation or anything like that. But I was kind of like, I guess people are mad about some money going to something. I don't know.
I don't know. When you start saying taxation, I start getting that quote in my head: taxation without representation is theft.
Oh God,
So,
like every time somebody says that, I keep thinking about the cartoon Ben and Me, the Disney cartoon with the little mouse that like rides around in Ben Franklin's hat.
yeah. I remember some of those cartoons. And the AFN commercials, those were just wild. Those were always wild. Especially in like the early 2000s, if you remember some of those.
I like the little history bits, right? And like
Yeah.
they would release a new one, and then they would play it like every ad break for like 5 months. And it would always be like they would use something like from classic rock. There was this one Leonard Skinner song, and it was like playing in the background. And I'm like, that's Leonard Skinner, and everybody's like, Jesse, we know you told us the last 10 times. Like,
You get super excited
I
about
know
it.
my second deployment when I was in 07, 08, when I was deploying to Iraq, and I was deployed with a bunch of new troops as well from a stateside unit from the 82nd. You know that they never left the United States their entire life, and here we
Yeah.
are. We're sitting in Iraq, or in Kuwait, going into Iraq, or in Iraq, and we're sitting at the MWR, and AFN goes on, and all the AFN commercials start, and here I am singing along to the chimes. They look at me like, Sarge, what is going on here? What is wrong with you? So I grew up on that stuff. I know these since I was a kid.
It's
I
kind
was
of
a
like when
fishing character.
when you're walking around and you start singing to yourself and you're like, there dee das. I don't know if you remember that song. There
Yeah,
dee
we
das.
promise.
There dee
He's
das.
so this high power.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. I still sing that song all the time, so don't feel bad. Sometimes it just gets caught in your head.
now
Now
what
I
I
gotta
thought
pull it up on YouTube.
what I thought was funny is when I was in Japan, like AFRTS, like they would kind of like, I guess, chop stuff that was recorded on networks in the States and kind of put it on the air. And so sometimes you'd catch like a half second of like a commercial for a Batman toy, and you're like, oh, and then it immediately to the next thing, right?
Mm.
Oh yeah.
And that was I told Amber last time, like we got to Germany. I'd been lived in Japan for a while, went to Hawaii, to Texas, and then to Germany. And when I got to Germany, I'm at the American Arms Hotel, and I slumped down on the bed. I turn on the TV, and all of the force protection stuff starts playing on AFN, and I'm like, oh, I don't have cable anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's just not a bad thing. We've been here before. Okay, you're gonna get to see
Yep.
some good shows. Just calm down.
I just remember Johnny Bravo, and I think they played Johnny Bravo on a loop for a while because it was Johnny Bravo, and then they played all that, and then it was like the Steve Harvey show, or not the Steve Harvey show. It might have been the Steve Harvey show. I don't know. It was the one where Steve Harvey was the principal in the school, hanging with Mr. Cooper. That was the show, and that it was like that lineup, you know. And then they played, I think, like Wishbone. Like if y'all remember, what's the story Wishbone with the little dog in the books? You
Absolutely.
know? Yeah.
I remember General Hospital.
Yeah.
My mom loved that show.
I remember seeing CSI for the first time. Would have been like 2002-ish, I think. And yeah, I'm talking and I brain farted.
Oh no, it's okay. We're actually at about an hour and 15 minutes. So
Oh
we
wow.
are a little bit over an hour now, but see, this is what happens when you get old friends together. So we're gonna have Doug back at some point in time. So Doug, feel free to come back. You're always welcome. Because we enjoy talking to you and hanging out with you.
Yeah.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
And I'm gonna
Threaten you
tease
with what I want.
I'm gonna tease something that I want to kind of have for a segment here. I'm not gonna name him right now because I don't want to put him on the spot like that. But I have approached somebody about possibly helping us with some content, and he's been in the military since before my dad was. Well, I think right around the time my dad was born is when he joined up, and he's been through Korea and everything else. And I feel like when we're talking about what life was like living in these places, he's been all over, and I think his perspective would just be amazing. And if he can't
Absolutely.
sit down with us, because he is quite busy. He's in his 80s. He's trying to, spend a lot of time with his family right now. Um, but I would love to maybe get him to answer questions. So maybe next time, Doug, if you can think of something you'd like to ask somebody with a big career
Yeah.
like that about what it was like for him, like jot it down, and we'll see if I can get him. If anything, I'll have him answer me on Facebook, and I'll just read out his answer. Because I don't want to put pressure on him, but he's a writer. I like writing. I love the guy, and I would love to include him in this.
Well, I reached out to Mrs. Stockton too, so I got a thumbs up from her. So hopefully we can get her on the podcast as well. So we've got big things coming. We just it's in the
Yeah,
lineup. It's all still building.
yeah. And I can't wait to talk to Miss Stockton again. She's probably going to be shocked at how much I've changed because I used to be pretty unhinged when I was a teenager back in Germany.
We all were a little unhinged, okay? We
What?
were military brats. That's just we were feral. It's
Yeah.
just what military brats are. We're feral.
And I
I'm
mean, those
surprised
folks,
they didn't ask us if we were vaccinated coming through the doors.
yeah,
You
like,
know that I made, oh my goodness, I do have to tell this story. So Doug, you were probably overseas during the time. Jesse, I don't know if you were there or not, but do you remember when mad cow disease hit Germany? So even still, it says when you go to like give blood or anything else, if you lived in Europe during these years, you can't give blood because of mad cow disease. And so I was trying to explain this to a nurse one time on why I couldn't give blood. She's like, mad cow disease, what do you mean? And I said, well, if my left foot just kind of crooks underneath itself and I start frothing at the mouth like repeatedly, hunched over, I said, please start to worry and don't take my blood, you know? But it's like, I don't understand why I can't give blood. Like,
Yeah, I couldn't give blood forever either. I think they lifted it now,
okay, cool.
but that's also the reason why when we went overseas, you know how all the troops had to get smallpox vaccination.
Yeah.
Since I was over in Europe for that long during that time, I'm one of the only guys in my any of my units that never had to get a smallpox vaccine.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. But you see, we also, if you remember, McDonald's came out with the chicken McPork sandwich that year. And how it was the chicken McPork sandwich, I will never know, but the Germans loved it. So,
I thought it was really funny. We were in anatomy and physiology class, and the substitute was like, "Does anybody know about mad cow?" And I'm like, I raised my hand,
yeah.
and I gave them this whole like 15 minutes of everything that I knew about mad cow, and like one of the other kids is like, "Who the hell knows all of this stuff? Like what?" And I'm like sitting there, and the sub is like, "Just calm down, let him talk," you know. And then they play the documentary, and then like basically what I told the class was like the Cliff Notes version of this hour-long documentary, and she's sitting there like she would like look, she'd be watching the documentary and then be like looking at me, and I'm like I researched it because it was a thing. Like,
It was a thing. Hey, I look at aliens sometimes at like 2 a.m. But that being said, until next week, like I said, Doug, thank you so much for joining us, sharing just a little bit of your perspective. We've enjoyed hanging out with you. Feel free to come back and hang out again. And next week, like I said, I don't quite know who we're having on the podcast yet. It might be Doug again. We'll see. But we will definitely be re-recording something next week.
okay,
All
and
right.
I'm gonna have this up by tonight, you guys.
Awesome. And then I'll send everybody the links. That's just what I do.
Yep, we are up on darn near everything podcast wise.
I
So
know.
and
Exciting stuff.
on the Alpha site. So
And on anywhere you listen to podcasts. So Apple, iTunes, Spotify, all that good stuff.
Amazon, yep.
Amazon, yep. So either ways, until next time.
All right. Bye
Okay.
everybody.
Bye guys.